Great.
Hi, I'm Dave Lenz with Center for Technology Commercialization, CTC as we're known. I'm here with Tina Chang, who's the founder and CEO of SysLogic. They're an innovative information systems consulting and services firm located in Brookfield, Wisconsin. And also say Tina's a strong supporter of the entrepreneurial community here in Milwaukee and the state. We're having a quick chat today on why innovation matters in times of distress. So Tina, tell us a little bit about yourself and about SysLogic to get started here.
Great. And thank you so much, Dave and team, for having me today. SysLogic, as you mentioned, is an information technology services and consulting firm. This is our 25th year and officially our third major economic downturn, where I would consider our third round going through times of crisis. And
Wow.
so it's been a long journey, and I can't believe 25 years has gone by. And I was just reflecting this morning, just when you're going through a third downturn, boy, does that feel different than going through your first one. So my big message to other entrepreneurs is hang in there. It does get easier over time. The decision making, the management of the emotions, the whole bit just gets a little bit more familiar. So I think that's important. A little bit about SysLogic. We are in the complex technical space, and that has meant many things over the last 25 years. But our areas of focus are heavy transactional software development, mostly in the proprietary product space. So all delivery channels, web, mobile, cloud, etc. Information management, you can imagine if you're developing systems, you're dealing with a lot of data. So our second layer of expertise is everything to do with data. And then if you combine those two areas of expertise, you can imagine how we got into artificial intelligence and IoT pretty easily. Third area, which everybody can understand is our fastest growing area, cybersecurity. And we really focus in on securing applications and the data that reside in them, especially now that there are more interconnected devices and interconnected enterprises. That's becoming more and more important. And then our fourth area is business management, where we're helping with digital transformation, governance strategies, business continuity for small and medium-sized firms, as well as government. So it's been a fun ride, really translating those four areas into today's technologies and consistently taking a look at how to apply them for our clients, as well as in some cases partners where we're developing solutions together.
Well, it sounds like you've evolved over the years and changed and innovated and so forth. That was kind of the message you brought last week, or not last week. It was 2 weeks ago. You were on a call with some of the business leaders in the area, and you had a specific message for them. Can you share that message with the audience today?
Sure. And Dave, you're right. It was a couple of weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and you can imagine all of our safer at home orders and essential business mandates were coming out, and it was a little bit of a spinning time for most companies, rightfully so. And so my message back then was, of course, we have to get through taking a look at current landscape, doing the downside scenario modeling for our businesses, making sure that we have the ability to make it through this. But it was my big moment to remind people that this is a very special time, whether you consider it 4 weeks or 6 weeks or however long this is going to go, to design that time to make for innovation and design that time. And it should be very structured time to think and think about opportunities, because not all industries are suffering from this. Some are actually thriving. And my big message to people that I definitely learned through the first downturns through our 25-year history is be really smart to take time to think, to follow the money. Because if you actually follow the money and understand where there are investments or future investments coming, combine that with your particular strengths or some of the innovation activities that you've always wanted to embark on, you'll find very interesting opportunities where they intersect coming out of COVID-19.
Wow, that is really powerful advice. and really strategic as well. That's great. Well, the thing, my ears perked up when I heard you talking because you mentioned federal research funding. You mentioned STTR, and there's also a sister program, SBIR. That's, for those of you who don't know in the audience, that's Small Business Innovation Research, and STTR is Small Business Technology Transfer Research. Anyway, my ears perked up because you said during the last recession, the Great Recession, I guess we used to call it, or maybe they still do call it that, the Great Recession, you were able to secure some funding for research that really impacted your company. Can you tell the audience a little bit about the experience and using this time during a recession to you move your technology forward?
Definitely. So, a little bit of a backdrop, Dave. When we went through our first major economic recession, it was the dot-com bust, so we were at the center of that. So we lost 40 or 50% of our revenue overnight. And I was 28 years old, and it really almost crushed our company. And when I came out of that and I chatted with a number of my mentors, they really helped me see that I acted too slow. I probably did not reach out to explore partnerships and or opportunities enough, and gave me some advice to make sure that I learned from those lessons. So when we hit the 2007, 2008 timeframe, I was going to ensure that I wasn't going to repeat those same mistakes. So again, my favorite saying during recessions is follow the money, because there is money out there. And it really came in a couple of pockets. So when we're seeing recessions that affect many, many pockets, industries, people, the government does come in to play a major role to try to boost the economy. And while they're boosting the economy, they're also looking for very interesting ways to encourage us to innovate for them and in areas that they care about. And they reserve pockets of federal monies specifically for small businesses to be able to do that. We had never done that before. And so at the time, let me just mention, we had never done any federal or major grant type of funding before. And I say that to make it really real, that if somebody has not been in this space before, there is a lot to learn, but it is not impossible. So this was very supplemental and a supplemental strategy for SysLogic when normally we just do private sector business. One of our clients was the Blood Center of Wisconsin. They're now known as Versiti, as they've rolled up through several states. But Blood Center of Wisconsin, their Blood Research Institute, is one of our amazing institutions, one of the largest blood research in the nation. And they were a client of ours, so they understood our technology capabilities. And the STTR grant is specifically a public, nonprofit, and private collaboration where we rely on that nonprofit for the science piece, and they rely on us for the innovation, the technology, the project management, and especially phase 3, the commercialization. So it was very much a way to combine what happens within research and science and to give it a commercial lens. And so for us, this was our first foray. I really, really want to thank the CIO at Blood Center at the time. Her name is Rodana Davis. She has since retired, but we're probably working more than she ever has in the blood industry. And we also brought in a secondary investigator from UW-Madison Research, because our particular grant was really studying the use of RFID in the supply chain. So if you remember back then, Walmart was on this big kick with RFID, really encouraging, if not forcing, their supply chain to start adopting RFID. So RFID was pretty big. And we wanted to discover if the use of RFID would really help enhance the blood supply chain, because at the time there were still 100,000 deaths that were still happening in the nation because of the wrong blood getting infused into the patient. And so it was an area the federal government cared about. And we said, let's figure out how to crack this nut. What we didn't know going in was that in order for us to develop something, it would be deemed as a medical device. And therefore, this required FDA clearance if it were to ever hit the marketplace. So that was a very big deal because the SBIR and STTR research portions and commercialization portions are one aspect, but going through FDA clearance is a whole nother aspect. And so it was a long journey. We started with phase one. At the time, I think the max of phase one award was $100,000. And that's really the planning aspect. Basically, do a write up and do some scoping to actually prove that your research has credibility and is valid to meeting the needs of the problem at hand. And then after that, we received another 1.3 million in funding to build out the solution. And that was phase two. They don't do funding for phase three commercialization. At that point in time, it's up for the small business to be able to either fund or raise private additional investment dollars to go to commercialize. But it was a wonderful process. And I'll tell you, that combined with the fact that the federal government at that time was really pushing states to stand up health information exchanges. Another area separately that we had good experience in because we're in data and healthcare. Those two really helped us ride out a very difficult 2008 through 2011 period when we were recovering from the last recession.
Well, that's great, Tina. Now, when I'm talking to people about SBIR, one of the things I say is that, well, you know, even if you end up not getting the grant or not commercializing, the process is still worth it because of the strategic thinking you do and because of the partners you form and because of really some of the new technology that might come out of it that goes somewhere else. Now, would you agree with that, or am I just embellishing the situation there on my promotion of the program?
Right. And Dave, thank you for bringing that up because you couldn't have said it better. And let me give you some examples of how that played out for us. So absolutely. You know, partnering, and I would recommend partnering, especially if this is the first go around. I like partnering with those that are focused on research and the science because they've done it for as their main course of action and they know how to do it well. And I think it brings a level of credentialization to the innovation and something that could be long lasting as opposed to another fad type of innovation. So giving it some real commercialization legs. If you're going to partner, this is a great exploration of how to partner because you really have to get to know your partner. And the reason why I say that is because you're going at this not just for a few months, you're going at this theoretically for and realistically for anywhere from 1 to 2 years. And in our case, because we had to go through 510K clearance, what ended up being a 4.5-year journey together. But from that perspective, imagine a small company like ours. At the time, we were probably about 40 people large, learning how to partner with a huge institution like the Blood Center and an even huger institution like UW-Madison. And the ability for us to gain context of how they operate and how they think were so important for now how we understand how to just do general work in those types of arenas. And it's different than doing business with private sector commercial. And so that was fabulous. Another fabulous aspect, and Dave, you hit it right on the head. It's not just about if you commercialize or not, because we decided not to commercialize. So what did we gain along the way? Well, the maturity that you have to develop in order to get good at research and thinking about commercialization was such a game changer for our firm. So a couple of things needed to happen for us. One, I will give the tip that bring people onto your team that not only tolerate paperwork and doing reports, but they're good at it. And I realized that there were certain people in our firm that were excellent writers. They wanted to be very precise, and they really took paperwork seriously in understanding its value to an overall project. Enhance that one more level in order to get medical device clearance. We needed to develop something called quality playbook, and we needed a quality system, not only for the project that we were embarking on, but for the entire project. For the entire enterprise. So SysLogic actually had to develop a quality system that ran through every department from the way we invoice and the way we tracked. Dave, can you still hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
You're
sorry
fine.
about that.
That's
Uh,
mute someone else, so that's fine. Just go ahead. You had to develop the
good.
quality system, which is amazing. I mean, small businesses often have to learn how to act like a big business and when they get in the SBR world and do some things with accounting, with quality and so
bet.
forth. That's amazing. That's amazing
The quality
experience.
system made us up our game and our processes across the enterprise, all functions, because we had to
That's
do it,
great.
and we wouldn't have done it otherwise. So, and then of course we became a company that had 510K and medical device clearance under our belt, which again would never have been something that we would have embarked on alone. So those were huge wins in preparing us 10 years later for being able to look at brick and mortar business in those areas and having the essential credentials in the marketplace where clients felt like we knew what we were doing because we had done it before.
That's awesome. Well, that is a great experience. Well, you're our new poster child for the all the experience that and advantages that your company can bring in, just from the learning process of going through this. That's great. So I guess you would say, in terms of tips for people thinking about doing it the first time, I guess for one thing you'd say is, you already said find a partner, but then I guess you'd say start early.
Definitely.
Start
And
early.
this is a perfect time. And, so I'm connected with a whole host of business owners. We're on the phone with each other every night. And these are my kind of 4 starter tips for them. For those that haven't applied for the economic injury disaster loans through the SBA or the PPP, please get on it. I mean, those are there to help you weather through this period of time. And if you're not necessarily needing to weather through this period of time, these are wonderful low interest rate opportunities to fund things like research and to fund the opportunity to innovate, because whether we're going through COVID-19 or not, we were already in this time that if you weren't innovating for the next generation, there was a great chance, and I worry about our small manufacturing companies, there was a great chance that you may go out of business. So this is a perfect time to understand, while everybody is unfortunately taking a little bit of a breather in some aspects, to figure out where you need to uplift your companies as automation and innovation. So first thing, go apply for where there is some federal support to help us through this time. Second, I've learned that we need to find our own productive ways to stay focused and to split out the time that you need to be doing quote unquote negative scenario modeling for your business, and when you need to have that optimistic creative time to think about what's next. For me personally, and this took me a few days, I do not read anything negative until after 5 o'clock, because I realized that if I did first thing in the morning, it influenced the way I operated and thought throughout the day. And sometimes my employees were the ones that got the unfortunate benefit of that. So figure out your best times where you allow yourself to spin a little, where you allow yourself to worry and be anxious, and then absolutely dedicate those times where you say, this is my optimistic, forward thinking moments where I say, how am I going to change the world? And those times for me, I block out times on my weekends or even some mornings to be able to do that. And I can tell you how many interesting partnership ideas and or product ideas I'm already coming up with just by myself. Then extend that to get on the phone and do that with a couple of people that you admire in your industry or outside of your industry, because these are also times to understand how to connect and collaborate in ways that we typically didn't have time for. And then fourth, making sure that you are understanding what your next horizon is going to look like if we ever have to go through something like this. So making sure that you are really grabbing the lessons learned from today, because we are going to go through another economic downturn again. I've been through 3, and I really heed the warnings and the mentorship that I got after downturn 1. And again, it gets easier.
So in this, I think I heard you say that you might be looking at your SBIR or STTR opportunity. Are there one or two quick tips you'd give to people, the things you'll do different this time or maybe better than last time?
Well, you know, when I applied the first time, it was a general landscape, right? So this time around, you can imagine how this landscape of COVID-19, all of its ripple effects, have inspired the federal government to quote unquote care about a lot of different areas. So there's a lot of variety to be able to hit for them of where innovation could come into play. And you know, yesterday I was on a UW Milwaukee web video where KT McFarland spoke, and she really talked. I'm sorry, KT McFarland is an ex-national security individual that used to work for President Trump, and her take was very interesting. But one of the things she said was, if if our investments in nuclear weapons was our answer before, it is not going to be our answer today. And she very much talked about our defense systems today, or our vulnerabilities are all technical. They're cyber in nature. They're pulling down the energy grid. They look very different than typical warfare. And she said that the answers of the next iteration are going to be coming from our technologists and our millennials, because that's who's using technology every day as our daily lives. So how do we take that and translate it into our industries? Don't overthink it. Some of them are so obvious.
That's great. That's great. Well, Tina, I just want to thank you today for sharing all your insights and your enthusiasm for innovation and moving forward. Just want to tell our audience that CTC is here. We're a state resource. We're actually funded by the state and by the federal government to help Wisconsin businesses to secure this SBIR and STTR funding. We have many programs and many resources to do that, from early training of principal investigators to review of proposals, of draft proposals. Our staff are all SBIR proposal writers and winners and PIs, and we're reviewers for the federal agencies. And we put on a formal review before major deadlines, where we convene a panel of agency reviewers to review these proposals and to give feedback in advance of the deadline so the companies can improve their proposals. And then the state also has a matching grant program. So if you win a phase 1 award or a phase 2 award, the state provides additional funding to help do commercialization and business development. So these are some of the things. Wisconsin takes the SBIR seriously, and I'm sure you would encourage anyone to take advantage of all of those resources along the way. So right now, let's check and see if we have any questions on the line before we wrap up this quick chat. Are there any questions, Tina or myself?
Definitely people who've put some questions in the chat, and we've had some people join us as the conversation's continued. I welcome anybody on the line. If you want to unmute yourself and ask your question, I can go ahead and see that. But then if you would like, a couple of questions that came into the chat were, do you find collaborations are more important during the downturn, or are they more important during the economic booms, or does it not matter?
I don't think it matters. I think that the role of the visionaries of the company are to always keep an eye in and ear out for great collaborations. I think the difference really becomes if the other party or parties make time for the collaboration. So when business is booming and everybody's trying to grow their companies and it's business as usual, so to speak, we often don't make time for collaboration. And that's where economic downturns really, afford us, unfortunately, a little bit more time, but force us to say, how do we look at going at life with other people? And so I think making and creating those relationships, identifying who would be great organizations or people to collaborate with at all times is important. You just may not always get an opportunity to execute on it during really booming times where people are just focused on growing their own companies.
Gave us a lot of great tips about getting started and about being able to be proactive and be thoughtfully innovative so that you can take advantage of some new opportunities. Can you give us a little bit more about how you organize your team to participate in the innovation process? What are some tips there?
So that's interesting. So let me talk about downturns in my management team. One of the things that I learned and did differently right now with the team is I've got a couple of people focusing on me on scenario modeling if things go bad, right? But you can't have your entire leadership team focusing on downtrends. So we're dividing and conquering, and I'm doing both, but I've earmarked a few of my management team members to say, we've got the downside modeling taken care of. I need you to think about the upside. I need you to look at the forward moving activity. I need you to scour where the money is going, what industries are doing well, and understanding during this time where we're working remote from home, what innovations like, but especially 8 weeks out, where some opportunities are going to be where all industries have figured out how to do life a little bit differently. And that leads to opportunities for us for innovation. The acceptance and the adoption of technology is just going to look so different. So an example of that is I happen to be on a board for one of our healthcare systems, and we had been trying to move the adoption of telemedicine in more strategic, but also more fast-paced ways than what the market or the compliance and the government were ready for. And this totally changed that. So now that telemedicine has become very real very quickly, how are we going to now add or bolt on new innovation to that to really bolster it, make it safe, compliant, and accepted in a marketplace that would have taken years otherwise?
Great. Well, I'm looking at the time. We have basically 1 minute left. If there are anybody else who wants to say a final word, I'm looking, scrolling, and I don't see any mics unmuted. So I will give the last word to you, Tina. Thank you for joining us, for one, and thank you for all of these very specific insights around how to kind of manage innovation in these challenging times. So any final words?
I want to just say that, you know, I'm so much more comfortable going through a situation like this 25 years in, because I had those bad moments during our first and second downturns. So for those of you that are really going through it for the first time, I say, you know, a big part for me was understanding and accepting my emotions and some of the anxiety and fear, and learning what to do with those emotions because they're real. And I've got family members and a couple of friends that had to shut down their business in a day because they were in certain industries. And really getting a hold of the process of self-actualizing will really make you stronger on the other side of this and more prepared for anything else that's going to come your way. So take some time and don't push those emotions aside. Really accept them and figure out what to do with them, because again, they'll make you.
Thank you so much, Tina. This has been a great discussion, and I'm sure we're going to replay this over and over again to our audience because this is full of gold nuggets. So thank you very much for your time and for sharing with our audience today. Thank you, and thank everyone for joining us. We'll talk to you on the next Quick Chat.